Some houses echo with memories of who lived there. This one in our story today remembers who wasn't allowed to leave. Hello, friend, and welcome back to Torches, Yoga, and Mindfulness. I'm Lauren, and this is our fourth installment in the Stillness in the Dark series, where our inner demons and external haunts often share the same face. Tonight, we are exploring a story called The House That Took. It follows a woman named Cora who returns to her late grandmother's house, a place that was meant to offer healing and a retreat and a fresh start, only to find herself slowly unraveling underneath the weight of old expectations, suppressed emotions, and something much darker that dwells within the walls. This story is about boundaries, burnout, and the cost of always saying yes. But more than anything, it's about finally hearing your own voice, even if it has to whisper through the dark to reach you. Cora pulled her car into the gravel driveway. It was a borrowed hatchback, full of things that she didn't really feel like were hers anymore. The house, tucked between towering pines, was her late grandmother's. It had sat empty for about a year, and her parents had offered it to her while she figured things out. Well, really, this was their way of saying, we don't really know what to do with you either. She sat there for a moment, just taking it all in. The pines, casting their early shadow, seemed to lean towards the house like they were trying to listen better. The paint was peeling in places, and the porch light flickered. It was getting late in the day, and it had been a very draining day. She decided she would worry about unpacking the car tomorrow and just grabbed her purse and some groceries and like a small carry-on size bag that held all the essentials. The porch steps wobbled and creaked as she approached the front door, and once she was inside, the smell hit her like a chemically lemon-scented cleaner and something older. Old newspapers, dust, and grief. She dropped her bag at the base of the stairs and stood in the hallway like she was just waiting for the house to say something first. Her parents had the electricity already turned on, but she would need to reach out to Xfinity tomorrow to get the cable and everything connected. Some of the old furniture needed to be taken to be donated or discarded, and she would sort that out tomorrow too. She added that to her mental to-do list that was quickly growing. They had come by earlier in the week to clean up a bit and let the house kind of air out, but it still felt so stale. She opened the windows, letting the cool spring breeze float through the house. After wandering around the house for a while just to take it in, she picked out a podcast to listen to while she ate a simple dinner and got ready to turn in for the night. The light in the bathroom flickered, making for an eerie ambiance. So she tried to wash her face, brush her teeth, as fast as she could. She normally slept with the TV playing quietly in the background, but until she could get the cable company out, Spotify would have to do. As she was just about to doze off, she thought she heard voices, like a far-off whisper. She sat up and paused the podcast, straining to listen, holding her breath for what felt like forever, and she heard nothing but the chorus of frogs outside. That's all it is, she told herself. You're being silly. New environment, new sounds. Sometimes new is scary, and that's okay. We're safe. The following morning, she woke up motivated and energized, ready to tackle this to-do list that was going to be the start of the next chapter in her life. Get the house together today, get my resume together, and out there tomorrow. Not long after she started setting her plan for the day into action, she got a call from her mother, asking Cora to make a double batch of her delicious lemon bars for a book club meeting that night. Cora tried to turn her down, saying she had some plans and didn't have the ingredients on hand, and that means she would have to go to the store. But her mom went on and on and on about how she wanted to impress the other ladies with the best treat. Cora couldn't say no. She promised to bring the lemon squares over at 4. After they disconnected, Cora started working on her grocery list. Later that afternoon, as she was pulling the second batch of squares from the oven, the hot pad slipped and she burned her hand pretty badly, The burn covered most of her palm and her thumb. She ran the cold water over it, put some aloe burn care on it, the whole time scolding herself for not having just said no to her mom in the first place. And look where it got her now. Ever since she came back home, there was something every day that she needed from Cora, or something they needed to do together. Cora hadn't had a minute for herself since she got back last week. But really, it had always been like that. Even while Cora was living a few towns over, her mom would send texts guilt-tripping her for not being there, for missing birthdays, family dinners, and their daily drama. Cora's hand throbbed as she squared and packaged the lemon bars. Each time was a reminder to herself of every time she had to say yes. She wrapped her hand, loaded the treats into the car, and headed towards her parents' house. Her hand still throbbed when she was getting into her pajamas later that night. Cora ever so gently unwrapped the gauze bandage she'd used to dress it. The area was so tender. The burn under the bandage looked as bad as it felt. The center had turned a deep dark red, and the skin all around it was raw and peeling. She redressed it, picked out a podcast, and settled in bed. She was rolling over in the middle of the night, the kind that wakes you up for just a moment, and she could hear someone talking in the room with her. At first, her mind said, it's just the podcast running and playing through. Then jumped to, but what if it's not? Now she was more than just a little awake. She pushed the thoughts away, squeezing her eyes closed, convincing her mind to go back to sleep. Just let the voices carry you off to sleep, she told herself. She started to really focus on what was being said in the podcast, but this didn't sound like any of her normal hosts that she followed, and not her usual paranormal or true crime genres. The speaker just kept on and on about someone being a disappointment, a disaster, and always too much. She sat up quickly, and instantly the voice stopped. She rolled over and grabbed her phone off the nightstand. The screen was dark. It wasn't playing anything. No podcast, no recent app activity, no explanation. Her hand started to throb again, pulsing under the bandage with every heartbeat. A sharp reminder of this day that just would not let go. She tried to just shake it all off, blame it on the stress and that she was tired, but the words from the voice kept ringing in her head. The rest of the night, she tossed and turned, only drifting in and out of a light sleep until her alarm rang out at 6:30. She hoped a run would shake her out of this. So tired as she was, she pulled herself to the edge of the bed, hands still throbbing. She'll deal with that later, she thought. And 15 minutes later, she was lacing up her shoes to head out the door. She did feel a little better when she returned home. She was putting the finishing touches on her resume when her phone chimed with a text from her mom. She needed Cora to give her a ride to the eye doctor later that morning, where they would dilate her eyes. Her mom said she would take her to lunch afterwards as a thank you, but even that felt like just another part of the obligation. More time stolen. She had a list of sites to post her resume to and some places in town that she wanted to try out. She texted her mother back saying, absolutely, I'll be there at 10. Cora closed her laptop and headed upstairs to shower and dress and tend to her burn. She knew her mom was going to give her a hard time about this one. She was always reminding Cora of how careless and clumsy she was. Her hand seemed to have swelled, and the bandage now cut into her skin. As she loosened it, the painful sensations got worse and sent shocks all the way up her arm. Under the bandage, the burn was much worse looking than the day before. The center had gone from a dark red to now black, and the edges were puffy and peeling deeper. She considered going to an urgent care, but didn't notice any pus or a fever, so she gently cleaned it, applied more burn gel, and rewrapped it, telling herself if it was worse tomorrow, then she'd go to the urgent care. But really, she knew she wouldn't, not just because of the expense that she couldn't afford right now, but there was also a quiet little voice in her head that was already telling her, "It's not that bad. Don't make a fuss. Don't be difficult." She paused at that thought, thinking how much it sounded like her mother. While waiting for her mom to finish up her appointment, Cora made an appointment with the cable company to come out 2 days from now. She was ready to have her music and sitcoms back. She loved the old house. It was comfortable during the day, but the quiet nights she wasn't used to were taking their toll. Later that evening, Cora stood beneath the flickering bathroom light, examining her pores in the mirror, when she heard the whispering come back. She quickly splashed some water on her face and tried to follow the whispers to the source. It seemed like it was coming from the adjacent room, but when she went in there, now it seemed to have switched rooms, maybe even hovering in the middle of them. She circled back to her room and pressed her ear against the wall. This is where they were coming from. This was the loudest she had heard the whispers. Still not really loud or completely clear, just that same soft hiss of a voices, like they were arguing, but not a back and forth kind of argument, just a constant stream of criticisms said more in a snarl through clenched teeth. She moved to check the wall by her bed, but heard nothing. But when she pulled away, she heard them again, this time coming from behind her and louder. She spun around, half expecting to see someone standing right there. Her breath came fast and shallow, and she was holding her wrapped hand, clutching it to her chest. The harder she tried to listen, the softer the voices got, sounding like they were trailing off. She tried to follow them through the house, pressing her ear to the wall of every room in the house. She finally gave up, but she couldn't wrap her head around it, and she found herself just sitting there on the floor between the living room and the hall. She didn't quite know where to go from here. She eventually managed to get it together enough to pull herself up off the floor and go through the motions of the evening. But that night she didn't sleep. The next day, there was something different. Not about her, but about the house. Like the air had changed. The outlets began sparking, her phone died every few hours, and the lights hummed. And then, of course, there were the whispers. They wouldn't speak all day, just every so often, and sometimes they weren't whispers, but would sound like the neighbors were shouting. A couple times, she went outside to check, but as soon as she stepped out onto the porch, she wouldn't be able to hear them anymore. Since she couldn't hear them outside, she decided to sleep on the screened-in back porch. But that's when the dreams came. On one night in her dream, she was walking through the hallway barefoot and dragging something behind her. Something heavy. It felt rough in her hand, and in the dream, when she tried to turn around to look to see what she was carrying, she woke up. The morning sun was already peeking through the curtains, so, exhausted as she felt, she decided to give up on trying to go back to sleep and just get her day started. Which was perfect timing because as she was accepting that there was no more sleep for her tonight, her phone rang. She looked over, saw it was her mom, and let out a little groan. As she sat up, her hand again started throbbing. Her burn was looking worse, and the center that had blackened was spreading. It now covered half her palm and was working its way up her arm. The skin around was peeling and pruny like when you spin too long in the pool, and it was so tender. She hung up with her mom, having promised to go over this afternoon to help hang some wallpaper, as her mom had put it, since you don't have anything going on. Her hand throbbed more. She would like to have something to do, something going on, but her mom always had something for her to do. She couldn't tell her no because it was always such an argument if she tried to back out of things or turn them down. Cora didn't want to fight. The errands and favors drained her, yeah, but not as much as the tension that came with pushing back. So she would just say yes, because even a fragile peace was easier to live with. When she stepped out into the hall, she was stopped in her tracks. There was mud in the hallway, smeared like something had been dragged dirty down the hall. The trail stopped at the end of the hall. There was a room down there on the end, but the trail just stopped like in the middle. It didn't turn off like it was going towards the room. But just above was the pull-down attic door where you'd access the ladder, and it was cracked open just a bit. She was trying to recall if she had ever really noticed it, but decided it could have been like that for some time. She had taken some items up there on her first day in the house. She grabbed a spare curtain rod that was in that far room and reached up with it to push the door closed, watching for a moment to confirm that it actually stayed closed. That night, she was ready to collapse on the couch when she got back home. She dropped her purse and her keys on the small table in the kitchen and kicked her shoes off. Her mind was replaying the day of her mother's constant chattering that was always rich with criticism. Cora dragged herself up the stairs, cradling her burning hand. The thought spiral finally stopped when she reached the top of the stairs, and a thought came in about how close she was to that comfortable bed. She could already see herself just flopping down on it and crashing out. Then she saw it. Out of the corner of her eye, she saw the attic door hanging open about 3 or 4 inches. She wasn't tired anymore. Adrenaline started pulsing through her body, and she started to see scenes from true crime shows that she had watched on Hulu about froggers, PHR, where those people were living in the walls and the attics of houses without the residents knowing. This would explain the voices and so many of the odd things that had been going on if there was someone living up there and hiding in there. She tried to quietly listen but didn't hear anything, not even the whispers. She retrieved a flashlight from her room, and when she reached for the pull cord to drop down the ladder, she paused for a beat, took a deep breath, and brought down the ladder all the way. It creaked and cracked, unfolding to the floor. Once it settled, she could hear the whispers she'd heard before in the wall. She called up, not to say hello, but to let the intruder know that she knew they were up there and that she had a gun. She didn't, so she really hoped they didn't call her bluff. She slowly made her way up, and at the last steps before her head would pass through the door, she turned around so that the ladder would be at her back, and her back would be a little bit more protected by the wall that was just on the other side of the frame of the door. She scanned the flashlight around the attic. The whispers seemed to be coming from all directions, but she didn't see anything out of the ordinary. After a couple of scans with the flashlight, feeling confident nothing was going to jump out at her, she climbed the rest of the way up and through the opening in the floor, which was the ceiling for the downstairs. Her breath was shallow as she reached up, pulling the cord to switch on the single bulb light that they had in the area. The bulb stuttered and then flickered on. Cora stepped forward, her shoes crunching against the debris scattered across the wooden planks, old nails and pieces of newspaper, dried leaves. The air was stale and dry, thick, with sour old house smell. Her flashlight scanned again, this time slower. She moved along the walls, eyes sharp for signs of movement. Nothing, only that sound, the whispers. The whispers were clearer now, urgent and layered, as if several voices were speaking at once, each one just slightly out of sync. But they weren't coming from all over anymore. They were coming from one spot, one thing. At the far end of the attic, partially tucked behind an old wardrobe, stood a tall mirror, the kind with ornate gold frame and little clawed feet. It leaned awkwardly as if someone had tried to hide it but couldn't quite let it go. She recalled seeing it when she was in here earlier in the week, but something about tonight made it stand out more. The whispers were coming from this mirror. Cora felt herself being pulled toward it before she realized she was walking. Her steps felt slow, like she was trying to move underwater. Her breath caught in her throat. Something about the mirror. It shimmered, not just reflecting the light, but something underneath the glass. The more she stared into it, the more shapes started to appear, suggestions of faces. She stepped closer. The whispers rose like static. She could almost make out the words now. They sounded like her own voice. Not quite, but close enough. You're never enough. You never will be. Keep saying yes. Keep doing everything they ask. Keep swallowing your truth. This is what you get. Cora gasped, stumbling back a step. She lifted the flashlight and aimed the beam at the glass, her hand throbbing, and the mirror just shattered on its own. A large crack right down the center, like a scream. Glass splintering outward in a spiderweb of fractures. Shards burst towards her, one slicing her across the arm and one across her cheek. The bulb above started flickering wildly and buzzing, and then it popped, and with a burst of sparks, the bulb shattered everywhere. Cora ducked her arms over her head and backing away until her heel caught the edge of a floorboard, and she stumbled hard onto her knees. Everything went quiet. The whispers stopped. The air felt wrong now, charged and almost metallic. She scrambled to her feet, blood now trickling its way down her cheek, and her hand was throbbing from catching herself on it. She didn't look back. She couldn't. Cora half ran, half fell down the ladder, yanking it back up to the ceiling and slamming the door shut behind her. Her breath came in sharp gasps. The hallway suddenly too narrow, the walls too close. She backed into her room, locked the door, and then pressed her spine against it like she could hold the house back with her body. She looked down at her hand and noticed the burn was spreading, thin, angry veins of red branching out from the blistered center like roots in dry soil. It wasn't healing, it was growing. Cora sat on the floor of her bedroom for a long time, her back pushed up against the locked door, knees pulled tight to her chest, phone gripped tight in her good hand. She didn't open any apps, she didn't even turn on the flashlight. She just stared into the dark, letting her eyes adjust, waiting for the whispers to return. But this night they didn't. But that silence was almost worse. It was heavy, like it was waiting. Eventually, her adrenaline began to drain, replaced with the throbbing of her injuries. She made her way to the bathroom to wash the blood off her cheek, dabbing it gently with a washcloth. The cut wasn't deep, but it stung, and her forearm was worse. She rinsed it and then checked her palm. The dark center of her burn had worsened, like it was charred now. The angry red veins spread their web further. The aloe she'd been using now smelled sour and rancid. She threw the bottle in the trash and wrapped her hand in a fresh bandage, trying not to cry. That night she didn't sleep. She didn't play a podcast. She lay in bed, blanket pulled to her chin, staring at the ceiling. Every creak of the floorboards made her flinch. Every gust of wind through the pines outside sounded like someone breathing just behind the door. She didn't answer her mom's call the next morning. She watched it ring through, sending the call to voicemail, and then she turned her phone off. Something had changed, not just in the house, but in herself. Something had cracked open, and there wasn't any sealing it shut. She moved slowly through the kitchen, eyes scanning the corners, feeling as if somebody might be watching her. The cupboards felt too loud when she opened them. Even her footsteps made her wince. She boiled water to make a cup of tea and sat at the table in silence, staring at the empty chair across from her like somebody should be sitting there. Her thoughts came fast and messy, spiraling between fear and guilt and something else, something harder to name. A voice that sounded too much like her mother's, but also like the mirror, whispering in about how ungrateful she was, how lazy, how she was wasting her life. But there was another voice too, her own. It was quieter but steady, and it said, "This isn't yours to carry." By afternoon, her fear had calcified into something sharper: anger. Not just at the voices, not just at her mom, at herself for letting it go this far, for saying yes so many times that her own boundaries had eroded completely. She was done being haunted. She bandaged her hand again, got dressed in some jeans and a comfortable t-shirt, tied her hair back, and grabbed the flashlight. She stood at the base of the attic ladder, one hand on the pull cord, heart pounding. "This ends now," she said out loud, surprising herself. She pulled on the cord and the ladder creaked down. This time, the whispers didn't start immediately. The attic was quiet as a crypt. She climbed up the ladder anyway. At the top, she didn't turn around. She stepped straight through the opening, bracing herself for whatever might come. She hadn't yet replaced the single bulb overhead, so she clicked on her flashlight. The mirror frame and shards were still there, shattered but upright, glinting in the beam of the light, like a spiderweb catching the morning dew. The gold frame seemed darker now, tarnished. As she stepped closer, she noticed something new: her reflection. Her reflection wasn't right. It moved slightly slower than she did, like it was thinking through every motion before copying it. Its expression was wrong, twisted in judgment, eyes hollow and mouth tight with resentment. "You're not real," Cora said to it. An eerie grin spread across the reflection's face. Cora grit her teeth, tears welling in her eyes. "I know what you are now. You're every thought I swallowed, every yes that I didn't mean, every time I convinced myself I didn't mind. I mind, very much so." The whispering started again, this time sharp and fast, a swarm of voices rising in protest. She took a step closer. "I'm done apologizing for existing. I'm done shrinking." The mirror cracked again, just a single slow fracture down the side, splitting her reflection in two. "I am taking back my energy," Cora said, as she raised the flashlight over her head and threw it as hard as she could. It struck the mirror dead in the center. The glass exploded, raining down in a cascade of shards. The voices shrieked as if being torn from the walls themselves, and the attic groaned, floorboards trembling beneath her feet. Cora covered her face again and ducked back. Her heart was pounding. The light from the flashlight flickered and then died completely. But the voices had stopped. There was only the sound of her breath, sharp and ragged. She stood in the wreckage, bandaged hand trembling, her reflection now scattered across the floor in 1,000 broken pieces. No more whispers, no more rot, only a calm silence, the kind that doesn't judge. On this night, Cora barely slept. Every time she drifted, the burn on her hand flared, hot and pulsing, like it was alive. At first, she tried to convince herself it was just the inflammation. She had given up on the aloe and put some antibiotic cream on it before wrapping it up that night. But by midnight, the pain had spread up her arms like vines tightening, and there was a strange thickness to her skin now, a pinkish sheen, almost glossy, in the glow of her bedside lamp. Her mom had called twice that night, and once more at dawn. Cora stared at the buzzing screen until it went quiet again. The silence that followed each call was heavier than she expected. A low-grade anxiety hovered. At first, she felt like she'd forgotten something important, but couldn't remember what it was. That anxiety faded into something more bitter, more liberating. Like the moment you realize you're not the one who's being unkind, but it's them. She moved slowly through the morning, sat on the porch, let the sunlight hit her face. She kept her phone off. The burn on her hand was still there, still spreading, but she just didn't want to deal with it right now. Not yet. By early afternoon, the itching had started, deep under the skin, a crawling, furious sensation. She peeled back the gauze and saw the edges had darkened, raised in thick ridges like veins or roots. That's when she made up her mind. She was done playing caretaker, done softening her voice and her step, done folding herself so small her mother didn't feel abandoned. She hadn't missed out on family. She'd been missing out on herself. When her mom called again around 5, Cora finally picked up. "I'm coming by tonight," she told her mom in a flat tone. "We need to talk." "Oh, honey," her mother replied, too quickly and too brightly. "I'm so glad you finally came to your senses. I was just thinking." Cora cut her off. "No, I'm not coming to help. I'm coming to say what I should have said years ago." She hung up. That night she stood on the threshold of her childhood home again, hand throbbing, skin crawling, but something was different. The air smelled too sweet. The house looked too still. Inside, her mother was already waiting, smiling, but something in her eyes was off. And Cora felt it again. The heat, the burn, the crawling under her skin, like it knew it was home. Returning home that night to her grandmother's house, Cora shut the door behind her and leaned against it, the cool wood pressing between her shoulder blades. The silence in the house wrapped around her like a weighted blanket. For the first time in what felt like days, she exhaled, a long, trembling release. It was like surfacing after holding her breath too long underwater. The burn on her hand tingled, not the sharp, hot throb she'd grown used to. This was something new, a pins and needles kind of sensation that spread like a whisper through her palm. Her brow furrowed. She crossed to the bathroom, turned on the flickering light, and slowly began unwrapping the bandage. The skin underneath was still pink, still tender, but now it was healing. It was receding. The strange mark, that faint sigil of charred lines, was nearly gone. And then she realized something else. No whispers, no voices in the walls, no movements out of the corner of her eye. Just quiet. Not empty, but warm, alive and welcoming. She returned to her room without pressing play on a podcast. No need for noise, no craving for distraction. Instead, she climbed under the covers, turned onto her side, and let herself feel the rhythm of her own breath. Quietly, gratitude came. Gratitude for the fire in her that had refused to stay small, for the strength it took to see it, feel it, name it, and leave it. She felt gratitude for her body, for carrying her through, for surviving what the silence had shown her. She curled her healing hand beneath her cheek, and her eyes fluttered closed. For once, she wasn't running from the quiet. She rested in it. All right, my friend, that is my story for you this week. Let me know in the comments if you have a favorite story so far. And if you're not already, make sure you subscribe and hit that little notification bell so you don't miss next week, where we will meet Theo, a brilliant detective hunting a serial killer that is always just one step ahead of him. Friend, thank you so much for sharing a piece of your day with me. Stay present, stay kind to yourself, and I will see you soon.